turn back and leave the room, I must say that is actually me in the photograph, so there is no illusion. It's just that finally motherhood has done its job, and it's the great equalizer, as I like to call it. So here we are. I just wanted to quickly talk you through a couple of themes in the story that I think are sort of relevant to this audience. For every city I've been in on this tour, I've tried to pick specific portions of the story that I thought that the audience from that city could relate to. And for example, in Bangalore, I was just talking about the characteristics that I take away from Bangalore in my life, which happens to be this notion of free will. Most of my peers couldn't hold down jobs, they couldn't stand their bosses, etc., etc. And I think that really helped me sort of understand that I was not completely nuts, and every time I sort of walked away from a job or I said goodbye to a boss, I knew that it was because I was a Bangalorean. And similarly here in Delhi, the theme I thought was most relevant was probably telling you the times that I had to sort of step up the distance in my sport or in my training, as the case may be, and those are the portions I'll read out to you, because I think that this is the heart of publishing, and I am trying to be a writer now, so we are, I'm just going to try to tell you a little bit about the sort of switch that I had to flip there, but that'll be towards the end. I've just put together a little talk with a few photographs that I've collected over the years, just to motivate a little bit the fundamentals, as you will, in my specific journey in endurance sport. Everyone wants to know, what is the basis that you had, or what is the platform that you had growing up, etc. And I think that when I think about my concept of home, it sort of stems from two very small towns in South India. One is Mannargudi, which is a little town a few kilometers, about 45 to 60 kilometers away from Tanjavur, and the second is, and that's where my dad is from, and the second is a little village called Atur, which is again 60 kilometers from the main town of Madurai, where there's a huge temple for the goddess. Well, we call her Amman, but she has many other names. And so for me, when I think about home, these are the two places that automatically come to mind, because my parents, like me, have lived in many different parts of the country. They have traveled all over. They've been in Delhi, they've been in Calcutta, they've been in Bangalore, they've lived in Chennai for, I think, half a year or something. And so they have moved a lot themselves. And so when I think about my home, I think that it also assimilates all the wisdom they've sort of carried over from all the places they have been. And finally, when it came to my life, I think I seem to share that portion of their destiny, which is that I move a lot, either for my job or for my studies, or to meet the man that would marry me. I had to go, I think, about 3,000 kilometers because nobody in South India would marry me, so that was the other issue. And to give you the background for the sport itself, I think I'd like to tell you a little bit about my family, because all the women in my family are complete nuts, right? They think that the world is a certain way, and they sort of tell their kids the same thing. They don't try to sort of sugarcoat anything. For example, in my mother's family, there are, I think, at least 6 sisters still around today, and in Tamil we say ama, which means yes. So the women in this family would keep shaking their heads and say ama, okay, and then they continue to do their own thing anyway. So as far as the men were concerned, everything was going just fine, ama, but then on the side something else was happening. And then I married this guy who has a mom who's also part of a family with 6 or 7 sisters. And of course in Punjabi, because he's Punjabi, they say hanji, and then they go ahead and do their own thing. So it was pretty much the same thing, that the house I came from and then the house I went to was about similar in this respect, that the women, they nod their head very well and then they do whatever they want. So that's a little bit about the women in the family. As far as the men in the family are concerned, they are also a stark contrast in that they never held back the women that were around them. They never told us that we had to be a certain way or fulfill a certain role or whatever the case may be. For example, my mom used to pay for all the dates that my dad and her used to go on in Calcutta, so he was very aware of the fact that, this woman is really, awesome, and so he never got in her way. He always told her that, go ahead and do what you want to do. He tried to protect her mind space, and so she could protect our mind space when it came to it at the end of the day. So I think that I typically don't try to only talk about the strong role models that I've sort of looked up to in the women in my family, because I have equally strong role models in the men. When I look at my dad, my maternal uncle, who allowed his own wife, who was my Perima Sachu, that's her hand in this photograph. She's almost 85 now. And he sort of embraced the rest of the extended family because they were the first in the line, and so a lot of the responsibility came back to them. And he never said to her, no, don't take care of your sisters or don't provide for them. They had almost nothing to go on, but then they were very generous with the way they handled everybody that sort of came to their doorstep. So I think the men were also equally important in the story, as is my husband, who thankfully is still with me after 5 years. So I'm very glad about that. And then when we come to the geeks in the family, that's how I really look like. And that's how I used to look like before, a disastrous talk in Pune. And this is how I look after 2 years of being a mom. So basically, I'm just an amalgam of two people that have this incredibly big work ethic, and they don't treat anyone specially. They don't tell me that I'm special or bahut acha karoge. And they just say, just get out of my hair and set the table or something. Be useful around the house, and that's usually the atmosphere